So I'm going to recommend that people create a plan, and you do this by sitting down with your marketing team. And I say that with a smirk because your team might be you and your spouse, or you and a friend, or you and your high school kid. And you just talk through some of these components that I'm going to take you through. So this is my outline for a plan. It has 4 parts. The strategy, which we'll cover first, and that's about identifying a target consumer. Market research is about understanding the nature of that consumer, what they're looking for, and maybe supporting it with some data that you can find online. And then writing marketing objectives, which is to say setting the goals, including sales goals, but other kinds of marketing goals like outreach goals. And then finally, off of those objectives, coming up with an action plan of how you're going to roll out. And so when you do roll out your messaging, whether that's a Facebook post or a special sale that you offer or whatever it is, it's got planning behind it, and it's not just an autopilot. And I see small businesses that I work with just sort of, coming up with ideas on a whim without a real objective. Just, well, what if we had a 25% off sale? Well, that might be a good idea, but what are we trying to accomplish? What's the goal here? So your actions will deliver more of what your business needs when you take some time to plan. So diving into strategy development or marketing strategy, this is really a fun part, if you ask me. And I'm looking at the list of different kinds of businesses that you have, and I think you have some great opportunities to play with and discuss through strategy with your team. And I might add, I'll probably say it again, but a day like today where it's kind of cold and rainy, that's when you brew a pot of coffee and sit down at the kitchen table and work on this stuff. So the question that we want to ask is to think about our target customer. And to choose a target customer, you're going to think about the kinds of people that are actually available in your region. So you don't want to try to identify a target customer in a vacuum. You really have to look at your region and have some understanding, but you're going to identify that target customer and try to really understand a lot of details about them. One way to do that is to think about the way that they shop now and the things that they do, and then ask this why question. So if we pick this sort of mom with a small child, we can say, she's our target customer. When she gets in her car to go get food for the family, she's making a choice. And if she chooses to go to the farmer's market instead of the grocery store, we have to ask why. Why would she elect to drive to the farmer's market instead of the grocery store? And when we start to answer that why question, I've done this with groups in person, so I know a lot of the answers. We might say things like, well, she thinks that the food there is fresher and of higher quality. So I'm just going to write that down for myself, right? It's fresh and it's high quality. You might say she goes to the farmer's market because she wants to bump into some friends. It's a social opportunity. So I'll make a note of that. And then we might say she goes to the farmer's market instead of the grocery store because she wants to support local farms. So we've come up with 3 why. Why would she make that choice? And it's a very simple idea. It's our job as marketers to take our understanding of her decision-making and play that same message back, right? So as much as we can sincerely offer that, we play that message back. So I'm going to give you examples, but first let's look at when she's at the farmer's market, why might she choose your booth over someone else's booth? That's another why question for us to think about. Let's say she's brand new to the market. She doesn't already know you or your farm or your business. And this applies, I know not everybody here would be at a farmer's market. This applies in the general market context. So when she's deciding between vendors, in this instance, why would she wind up picking one over the other? Well, if she's brand new to the market for the very first time, she's looking at these tents or these market stalls, and what's going to attract her to one? It might be the display. It might be signage that's clear, having pricing clearly visible. It could be as simple as you're looking up, you're smiling, you're making eye contact, you're not in the back of your stall looking down at your phone. But we can think about the messages that we could put out there, right? So if she wants fresh, high quality food, we've got a really nice visual display, right? We've got all our things stacked with higher and higher as you go back so that she can see the quality and the variety. If you've got vegetables, you're misting them with water so they stay fresh and bright. They're not starting to wilt or anything like that. If we know that she wants to support local farms, this is very simple. We have a sign that says our farm name on it at the stall, and then it says the name of our town, right? So we're just playing back this message that we understand. And this applies in many different contexts, but I'm going to use this example. So if we know that our target shopper wants to support local farms, then we're going to make sure that they know that we're local by putting the name of our town on the sign. It's as simple as that. That would be considered a successful marketing technique. So when we think about target customers, each target customer, and you're going to end up identifying your own target customer, has these, they have these certain characteristics that's useful to study. I've broken them up into 4 basic pieces. Each customer has needs, motivations, desires, and buying habits. These are 4 characteristics that I think it's useful for you to sort of flesh out from your target customer. So when it comes to needs, they're very basic, and I have here, hopefully that font shows up. You know, it says I need carrots. So, you know, when this lady's going to go shopping, this is pretty basic. I need carrots, and no surprises there. Motivations are what drives her to make a certain carrot selection, or even the store selection, or the vendor selection. So motivations, when I buy carrots, I want to support local farms and avoid pesticides. So now we know something more about our customer. The desires are anything extra that we can offer to really sort of put us over the top in terms of pleasing and satisfying the customer. So here I say I want red cord chantenays for my dinner party. Red cord chantenay is a variety of carrot. I've grown it in my garden, and I have to tell you, it's not very good, but it has a beautiful name, right? And so I need carrots, and I want to support local farms, and I want to impress my friends at a dinner party. I'm going to tell them, oh, these are red cord chantenays from the farmer's market. Beautiful name, mediocre carrot. But anything extra that you can offer that you know your target customer would value. And then you have the buying habits, which, like I said before, are very practical. So, you know, I don't have time to stop at the farmer's market for just one thing. So with this target customer, you know, we can grow the carrots and we can package them right and we can describe them right, but we are also going to have to get the product placed in a place where they're going to shop. So maybe that's having a roadside stand on a major commuter road. Well, back in the day when people drove to work. Maybe that's getting our product into the stores where they shop, or, you know, nowadays it's having online ordering and offering home delivery. Whatever it might be for this target customer, understanding their buying habits and then working to get your product where, you know, available where they're going to shop. Those are some examples of how to work on and flesh out those 4 characteristics. So when it comes, I am gonna talk about local food buyers for a moment. And this, like I said, the same principles apply. I know someone on here, you know, there's a few people on here that don't necessarily have a food or farm product, but all the same principles apply. I'm going to offer 4 basic groups as a starting point for you to come up with local food customers. And ultimately, you should get more specific than mine. So, well, it says meat because I didn't switch it, but it's local food buyers. The first is the foodie. So they're really experience driven. When these folks think of food, in addition to being, of course, a basic necessity, it's also more like a hobby, right? So they're always after the experience, and there's a lot of experiences that can come from shopping, right? It's talking to the vendor or the person who created the product, the baker, you know, hearing their story, hearing their technique. Learning about different varieties, trying new things, trying samples perhaps. Foodies would be receptive to trying, you know, new or you know, what we might call weird vegetables, odd cuts that they haven't tried of meat before. trying new recipes. And the experience also includes, going to the farmer's market, going to restaurants that serve local fare and so on. So just think about the primary driver in this purchase is experience. Then you have the cause-driven consumer. So whether it's a social cause or their own personal health, the reason that they're seeking out local food is to support these causes. So the local economy, local farms and agriculture, certain styles of agriculture, whether it's grass-fed or grain-finished or heritage breed or heirloom variety, they want to support those methodologies, or like I said, their own personal health, where what they want to support is their health, and they think that these are the foods that would best support that. That's the cause that they're supporting when they purchase. So these two groups are probably very familiar to you because I think they seem pretty visible and pretty common in the local food scene. But we also have traditional buyers, which, I think folks, when I'm helping folks create business plans for new farms and new food products, they tend to forget about traditional buyers. They are more price-driven, or we could say value-driven consumers, but still good candidates who show up to buy local food. These are folks who might go to U-Pick farms, who do bulk buying, who buy their meat in quarters or halves of animals, people who do a lot of canning and freezing and other kinds of preservation. They're looking for good value, right? A good price. They're not necessarily your farmer's market customers, but they are your roadside stand. And like I said, you've picked customers. And an important group to remember, if your business is in a rural area, you're probably have more access to greater numbers of traditional buyers. And I think it's a wise group to choose. I always like to joke that, back in the 70s, my parents lived in a very rural area in New York State, and they bought local food even though it didn't have a name. They bought bushels of corn to do freezing, and they bought bushels of apples to make sauce, and they bought a half of a beef animal, mainly because it was available, it was local, locally available, and it was a good value to buy that way. So think about your traditional buyers. Then there are culturally driven buyers. So these are folks who have cultural traditions that they want to preserve. They may have come from another country or observe religious restrictions, but their purchases are to satisfy and maintain those traditions. So again, looking for particular varieties of vegetable, looking for certain cuts of meat. There has been some research showing that these buyers come to farmers markets and to local food stores because they value high quality ingredients and freshness more than, let's say, traditional American consumers. And they're a real market to serve. So think about your culturally driven consumers. And I like to remind people that if you eat turkey at Thanksgiving, that's a cultural purchase, right? The reason you're having that protein on that day is to preserve a cultural tradition. Or we could even argue even eating an apple pie or a pumpkin pie on that day. All right. There are other, so I've kind of covered here the four basic local food buyers, but I want to say there are other consumers that you can apply this the same way. So think about folks who raise livestock. They could think about the auction buyer, right? Who's buying calves at auction for their operation. They're looking for certain traits in those calves, and they'll pay more when they see those traits realized. So that's a good example, one, of how you can support better pricing through target market, and two, how you can take the same kind of thinking, even if none of these four groups make sense for your business, and apply it to who your target customer would be, understanding their needs, their desires, their motivations, and so on, and sculpting your messaging around that customer. So even if this doesn't directly work for you, you'll understand. I'm also going to introduce a new customer that I've had to develop in the last several months. I'm calling it the crisis consumer. And I think it's particularly relevant in your region after talking to Marianne, but it's relevant for everyone right now. Buying habits have changed. And I think that the goal here in introducing a crisis consumer would be to say, that you would try to accommodate these consumers right now, but ultimately I'd have a plan in place, a long-term strategy of how we're going to retain these customers. So folks are here, there's a certain pressure driving them here and driving them to make certain, make their purchases the way that they are. But do know that, hopefully we'll see COVID fade into the distance, and then we're going to want to retain these customers, not just lose them when that pressure's off. So let me describe these customers quickly, because I think it's useful for everyone. I'm going to describe them in terms of problems and opportunities. It's just another way to get at their characteristics. So the COVID consumer wants to leave home as little as possible, especially as we head back into these winter months. People are once again feeling more nervous than they had over the summer. They prefer to order and pay online, what's often called contactless paying or buying. They're worried about food shortages, particularly meat, because of the plant closures we saw in the fall, but they're worried about all kinds of shortages. Look at what happened with toilet paper. I know locally here, I can only still buy one box of tissues per visit to the store. They won't let me buy more than one box. So people are still feeling anxious about other kinds of shortages. They're worried about bringing the virus into the home on their goods. So what that reflects really is the length of the supply chain. So they're interested in buying from a shorter supply chain. They may not have the money for large purchases. There are still a lot of folks that are out of work as a result of this. And those that do have money may be looking at the state of the economy, what's going to happen next, and feeling nervous about making a large spend. So the opportunities that when we take these characteristics, is that people are preparing more food at home because they're not going out. And I've seen different surveys, but some said that, if you took the population as a whole, 50% of the meals were eaten outside of the home pre-COVID. And of course, that's really turned the other direction. People are eating much more at home. I can't imagine eating half my meals outside the home, but I know it's true for a lot of the population. They're willing to buy products in bulk and to stockpile when they have the opportunity. And that's actually what happened with toilet paper. There was never a shortage, but people wanted to stockpile it, and that's why it went missing from the stores. So there's still that mentality out there, and we can still see it with certain products. People are eager to buy from a short supply chain. So that's where the local farm and the local purveyor seems better than even a chain grocery store. Because if you just think about our bread example, a loaf of bread that shows up at a major chain grocery store has been handled, let's say, by 8 different people perhaps. There's distributors, there's warehouses, there's the store clerks, there's the other customers and so on. But when they buy it from a local baker, they know it's been handled by the baker and maybe 1 or 2 other people. So they're looking for that short supply chain as a sense of less opportunity for infection. And then they're very eager to support local businesses. And this has been a great byproduct of this crisis, is that we saw a sort of patriotism come around with consumers and a new eagerness to buy from local businesses. And I think the mentality was to support the businesses that are here now so that they'll be there in the future. So we've seen a huge spike, and Marianne and I were chatting about that before we got started. People are looking for ideas for meals. Those people that are now cooking more meals at home may be running out of ideas, and so they're interested in getting suggestions for recipes and foods and taking them up. And then bulk pricing, making bulk products. So I wanted to, I spent a little extra time on the crisis consumer because I think it's relevant, and it's going to continue to be relevant for many months to come. Who knows how long. But again, when it comes to developing a strategy, and we're going to get into the real nuts and bolts of strategy right now, what I recommend is having one market strategy, which is your long-term strategy. Picking a target consumer to focus on and not making that pandemic based, but in the shorter term to take an understanding of the pandemic consumer and trying to understand them, serve them well, and then transition them to become long-term customers and not lose them. So it's a more complicated message than I used to give in the past, because I'd say pick your target customer, understand them, and stick with them. You're always going to have to update your understanding as their preferences change, but just pick one. Now I'm saying, yeah, there's logic for a short-term strategy to take the crisis consumer, and then ultimately stick to your long-term plan. So let's develop your message, and it's fun to work on. We're going to do that in the next slide with a strategy sentence. But to give you some of the rationale for having a marketing strategy, really focuses your message and your identity as a business. You don't want to be just another purveyor. You want to have your own spot in the market, and catering to a certain customer type will begin to build that definition around you. The term we have for that in marketing is called positioning, and it really builds your position. It will make your marketing labor more effective. And, I trained as an ag economist, and when I say effective, I'm really thinking of a measurement. It's always in my mind, a measurement of efficiency. And the way that I would do that for small businesses would be to look at the dollars in gross sales that you can generate for each hour that you spend on your marketing effort. It's very easy to think about that rate when you think of the farmer's market example. If it's a 6-hour market and we have to prepare and drive there and set up and then sell and take down, let's say that it takes 10 hours of labor to sell at that market. If we're getting $1,000 in sales, then we have a rate, right? We have $1,000 for every 10 hours, or $100 an hour. Then we can just begin to work on improving that rate. Well, that would be the effectiveness or efficiency of your labor. You want your labor to pay off. You want it to be effective. So strategy actually can improve that rate. And I think we'll see examples of how as we go through this material. Having a strategy creates differentiation in the market and positioning, as I defined it a minute ago. It will attract your target customers. It's kind of funny. I think of it as like, flowers attracting in bees. They're going to sort of smell you in the market, and they're going to come on in because your messaging and your identity will be clear. Allows you to sincerely serve your customers better. And that's this point that we're coming from with our marketing. It's not tricking or manipulating folks into buying. It's trying to really understand them so we can serve them really well. When we serve them well, we're going to have great sales. And finally, looking what the future will bring. And I had that bullet point pre-COVID, and I was just thinking about new competitors coming into the market, new trends arriving in the marketplace. But yeah, having a strategy in place allows your business to flow with changes in the market, as opposed to scramble or sort of react. So you're just going to have your strategy in place. That's some of the rationale, because I have had some pushback from farmer friends that say, why do we need a marketing strategy? So I worked on that. All right, so this is a strategy sentence, and this is how, if I were you, I would sit at the kitchen table with my pot of coffee and work on writing a sentence that describes my target customers in great detail. This sentence should be written so that you would never want to show it to the public, because it's not for them. It's not for a brochure or a Facebook page. The strategy sentence the intent here is to draw a caricature of your target consumer in order to improve your understanding and inform your decision making when you make marketing decisions. So, think about what a caricature is. It's when a character artist draws you, they draw really exaggerated features, right? But it's still recognizable as you. So when they draw me, they make like really a big nose and really giant eyebrows or something. I still know it looks like me, but they've picked on certain characteristics and exaggerated them. That's what you want to do with your strategy sentence. So let's work on one. I'll do the talking, but it'd be fun if we were all in the same room and we were doing this one. This is Kraft macaroni and cheese. You're all familiar with the product. So let's say that we're the marketing team at Kraft and we have to work on our strategy sentence for this product. Okay, I understand we're going to not say farm. We're going to just say we make. What do we make? Well, it's tempting to say what we make is macaroni and cheese, right? So let's start there. We make macaroni and cheese for who? Who do you think is our target customer for this product? People often want to jump in and say that it's for kids, right? So we make mac and cheese for kids. But I'm going to give a little pushback on that and say, realistically, who benefits from this product more than the kids that are begging for it? Right? It's the parents who have to prepare dinner. So let's say that we make macaroni and cheese for busy working parents, right? Who are tied up and can't make a scratch meal. Get those farmers market ingredients out of the fridge and start cooking at 4 o'clock for 6 o'clock dinner. And in that case, since we've defined our customer, and we're doing this through conversation at the kitchen table to work on our target customer, since we know that it's busy working parents, and I'm actually going to even reduce that to busy working moms, because moms do 80% of the grocery shopping in the United States. Now, what we're providing mom with is not so much macaroni and cheese, but dinner, right? We're providing her with a fast, easy dinner. So as we fill in our sentence, we're going to say, we make fast, easy dinners for busy working moms who, and we're going to just try to find some other characteristic of the mom that will help us understand our marketing. And we're just going to say, who have run out of time, right? That on this particular day, you're let's say pre-COVID days, your kids are at school, you're working, you pick them up from school, you drive them off to some kind of sports practice or some other practice, right? You pick them up from that, you have to maybe drive somewhere else. Now you're getting in the door at 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night. Everybody's been out of the house all day. This isn't when you're going to make a scratch meal. You're going to reach for that easy and quick solution. So that's what we provide. So I'm going to say that we make fast, easy meals for busy working moms who have run out of time and give up for today, right? Give up on the farmer's market carrots and the grass-fed beef or whatever. This sentence, when you write this sentence, you see how we wouldn't want to put this on our Facebook page, right? We want to make it exaggerated and specific so that it's useful to us. When we have the sentence, it will inform, I would argue, every marketing decision that we have to make. So let's take an example of, we have the budget to place an ad in one magazine. Which magazine do we put our ad in? Well, we look at our sentence. We need a magazine that will reach busy working moms. So there's a magazine that's called Parenting Magazine, right? If there was a magazine that was called Busy Working Moms Magazine, we'd put it in there. But there's one that's called Parenting. So the point is, we're going to try to reach that customer. It might be tempting to think, when it comes to reaching folks, well, I could put this ad in the New York Times, right? Newspaper, because everybody sees the New York Times. It's printed all across the entire country. But reaching so-called everybody is not as efficient as reaching our target consumer where they're already looking. So a wide blanket advert isn't really as effective as a targeted ad. And that's the point of working through this sentence and the point of using it to inform decisions. So we're going to put our ad in Parenting Magazine. What's it going to say? We're going to play back what we know she values. So we're going to say, dinner is ready in 5 minutes or something like that. We're going to say, in essence, we've got fast, easy meals. And how could we improve our product? Here, the version that I've pictured involves boiling water and measuring milk and measuring butter. Well, even if you don't like to eat it, Kraft did improve the product because they came out with a little cup that you just pour some water in and microwave it, so it's faster and easier. So they understood why the consumer valued the product, and they improved it from that perspective. So this is how you can use your strategy sentence. And again, I argue, if you're selling at a farmer's market and you need to have bags available for the customer to carry your product away from your stand, when you're choosing what kind of bags to buy, there's an autopilot response to just maybe go to the local supply store, get the bags that they have, or to find the least expensive bags. But now you're going to say, look at my strategy sentence. What kind of bag would my target customer most want to carry my product off in? And that's going to really inform that decision. If your customer is my very first cartoon mom who's holding a baby on her hip, you might get bags with handles so she doesn't have to hold that paper bag on the other hip. I've carried my kid and a paper grocery bag around, and I'm always kind of like shuffling one back up because I'm losing the other. So you'd think about that target customer, really talk it out, and then make your decisions. So all sorts of marketing decisions, even right down to what kind of bags. If you had a very premium, local foods, kind of foodie consumer who wants the premium experience, then you might look at getting nice craft paper and a stamp with your farm logo and wrapping their product in that and stamping it. You just put some thought into every marketing decision based on your strategy sentence. A little bit of a reality check. I've already said it, but you don't put this out for the public. This is just something that you use to guide your own decision making. So you don't write a strategy sentence and put it on your brochures or your Facebook page. Don't worry that the outward appearance of your marketing will seem unusual to non-target customers. In fact, ultimately, your focus on your target customer will attract all customers to you. That's sometimes hard for people to wrap their head around. They're worried about losing the other customers. You won't alienate non-target customers with your marketing. And think about our Kraft mac and cheese example, right? We theorize that they're targeting busy working moms who run out of time when it comes to the end of the day and meal prep. Well, that could be their target customer, but who else buys a lot of Kraft macaroni and cheese? College students, right? So when I was a 18-year-old guy in college, I did not identify with busy working moms. I did not know them or understand them, but I did need fast, easy dinners. So by working on that target customer and satisfying them, Kraft has really been able to build an identity and draw in all consumers. So don't worry about losing your non-target consumers. So brainstorm activity, I'll just do it for us, but how would busy working moms on a budget like to buy sausage? Let's say you're raising your own livestock and you're making sausage. What kind of sausage would they want to buy? Just want to give another illustration of how to develop the product. They would want, if they're really busy, they wouldn't want to buy frozen, right? That takes time to thaw. They'd want to buy fresh. If they're feeding small children, they don't want hot and spicy. They want mild flavors. They might want to be able to buy a bunch at once since they don't have time for a lot of shopping trips. And think that they might want to get the sausage already formed into patties or links instead of those big bulk bags where they have to now do that work of forming it themselves. So think about your target customer and develop your product. Your strategy will really define so much of what you do, your product mix, the sizes, the varieties that you offer, how many different products that you offer, your pricing. Your pricing has to, of course, be based on cost and profit goals and so on, but also the size of a product and what price it comes out to can be informed by your customer base. How you describe your product and the claims that you make about it, claims like local or all natural or whatever you want to say. How you sell the product and get it to your customer, where you place ads and what their content is, what you say about the product, and promotions being things like sales, coupons, samples, and all be informed by your strategy. In summary, the less you like marketing, the more you need strategy, because it will reduce the total number of hours that you need to spend on marketing. Assess the marketing styles that fit you, that you're going to enjoy and be able to maintain, and then also that fit your business and your location, which is to say, you do need to choose a target customer that's actually available in your area. Identify that exaggerated and specific target market, and then focus your marketing and ultimately your production activities to serve the needs, motivations, desires, and buying habits of this customer. And these will lead to very planned, deliberate efforts, which pay off better than autopilot responses. Autopilot is just what we fall into when we realize, oh, we're producing this stuff and we need to sell it. And, I can sort of joke around a little bit, but when I was at Extension, I was production focused, right? I would make a workshop and I'd really plan out the content of my workshop that I was going to offer to farms or to consumers. And then after hours of creating my product, if you will, realize, oh, I need to advertise this thing, right? And I'd make a poster and I'd kind of stick it up around town. I was guilty of not having a marketing plan when I was in that position because I was focused on production. And that's the temptation. If you're passionate about what you do, if you're a beginning business or a small business, my encouragement is to take the time and do plan to have a marketing plan and a marketing effort. See, the time is 9:45, so I do have some more slides, but I'm going to fit them into the next section and we can stop for questions.
From Catherine to everyone, can local farms supply grocery stores or nursing homes or schools? How much, if any, is already doing? Would these be viable markets?
I can answer from my perspective, but I think she may have also been asking other participants if they're selling into those markets. To be frank, I think that nursing homes and schools tend to have very small budgets, and whether or not they might be interested in buying from a local farm is one thing, but the practicality of a small farm or a small business selling to them is another. And there are great programs that people are doing around the state to try to get local food into schools. But I think when it comes to price point, it may not be a viable option for most small businesses. As far as grocery stores go, yeah, that can work because they don't have quite the same price sensitivity. But you really want to make sure that you're choosing a grocery store that serves your target market. We're going to talk a little bit in the coming slides about this idea of having consumers that pull your product into existence. So if these grocery store shoppers are asking for local products and seeking them, that price will be supported. If you're going into a grocery store where the consumers don't particularly value local, then you're more like trying to push your product onto them, and I don't think you're going to have a lot of success.
Marianne, this is Jim Barber. I just have one comment, I guess, for Matt.
Go ahead, Jim.
We have types of buyers. You have the price-driven customer. They're not necessarily loyal to any particular vendor if they're only price sensitive, which is where that value segment comes in. Or if you give them a good value, they're much more loyal to the customer. So if you're looking to provide a lower price product because it's a much bigger market of people, it's important to always emphasize the value aspect of buying from you.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. And when I go back to my four, I had the foodie and the cause driven, and then I had the traditional buyer. I meant to say, your traditional buyers are going to feel that there's a great value, right? The easy example to think about is when they buy a quarter of a beef or a half a pig from you, they're going to feel like, well, I got all this at one price. If you sell them a quality product, you've got customer retention, right? They feel good about what they got. They're going to come back year after year. You have a very loyal traditional buyer. Think about, as a contrast, the foodie. We said the foodie is experience driven. So they're out trying to experience everything they possibly can. They want to try everything. So you sell a foodie a really great steak and they think it's delicious. They're not necessarily coming back because what do they want to do? They want to try steaks from all the farms or, cookies from all the bakeries. So it's a different prospect when you're dealing with that customer who's experience driven because you don't necessarily get the loyalty. Whereas your traditional buyer, which would be, one would think, a larger customer base, if they feel good about the value, they'll be back. So you're dealing with a more loyal customer base. Thanks for that point.
For your target customer, you could be targeting several of those groups. You don't have to target just one or another. Because for my product, what I'm thinking of doing, we're actually targeting 3 of those groups. And I'm hoping that you're not going to tell me that's unrealistic.
Well, what I'm going to tell you is that for the amount of effort that it takes to do targeted marketing, that you should choose one target consumer. So yeah, targeting all 3 is slipping into that, well, everybody would like this product. And selling to everybody is actually way more time consuming and a lot less efficient. So what I'm going to recommend is developing a customer in your strategy sentence, a customer that you describe, just one, who is a really exaggerated and specific target audience. And just choosing that one, and frankly, putting all of your marketing effort, all your communication, your product description into just serving that customer. And remembering that you will win lots of other customers, but your efforts will be more efficient through target. And that's really, yeah. So I am going to say, developing 3 strategies. I always tell people, unless your products are really dramatically separated by space and time, then it only pays to have one strategy. So yeah, if you're selling honey in New York City and loaves of bread in Ithaca, you could have 2 strategies, right? One's for there, one's for there. But otherwise, I would have one strategy, and that, yeah. And don't worry about losing all the other people. The point is to really serve one group well, because it's going to build this strong identity. Again, Kraft mac and cheese, and I could think of lots of examples. Let me really quickly, because there weren't a lot of questions, say the North Face jackets, right? The North Face, literally, if you go back to the 1980s, they make the most extreme cold weather gear for people who climb the highest peaks in the world on the most difficult side of the mountain. Now that's a specific audience, right? If North Face said, we just make lots of cold weather jackets for everybody, we wouldn't be talking about them. They said, we just make this stuff for this one very small set of people. Ultimately, everyone identified with that and wanted their product. That's why we're talking about the North Face. So every college undergrad who had to walk across campus in February said, well, obviously I need the most extreme cold weather gear, just like the mountaineers, right? So having a strategy that focuses on one group, serves them well, builds an identity, and ultimately you will get the other consumers. And I hope the North Face works for you.
Thank you.
Just take a quick break.